All right, Nino. So we are out here today for a candlelight vigil. This has been in the works for a couple of days. It's to honor the memory of George Floyd. What are you hoping to see here tonight in Central Park, given the conversation around the country right now?
Well, I'm hoping to, number one, see a peaceful vigil, but it is in memory of George Floyd, and to do anything else but celebrate his life and his memory. And also, this is their opportunity to have their voice, and a peaceful protest is what I hope to see, because anything less than that loses the meaning of what we're trying to do out here. And the Black Lives Matter is trying to get their message across of the injustice that they feel is occurring to them. And frankly, we've seen it time in and time out. And this is the first time you saw police chiefs across the nation immediately stand up and say this was a criminal act, and the individual who was a police officer at the time is in jail now, committed a criminal act. As a matter of fact, I came out and said it on bona fide media. So it's extremely important that this stays peaceful. I do not want it to any way deter from Mr. Floyd's memory.
Yeah. And a lot of people believe that Black Lives Matter is anti-police. Can you talk about the conversations you've had with the Turlock Black Lives Matter group in planning this vigil, and just kind of the conversations you've had with them during this time?
Well, I've had the opportunity to get to know all of the people involved in the Black Lives Matter here in Turlock, and they have an extremely valid concern. Actually, all the African Americans and those of color have a valid concern in regards to, police incidences where there was brutality, and in this case with Mr. Floyd, a murder was committed. But they're no different than any one of us. They fear for their children, they fear for themselves. You should be able to walk outside wearing a hoodie without worrying about whether something's going to happen to you or not. And I can only speak for California and the laws that have been passed here and the training that we go through, but we have come night and day from the incidents that happened back with Rodney King. And I want us to maintain a peaceful decorum here, because now when you associate Rodney King, it's two separate incidences if you think about it. It's Rodney King incident and then the LA riots. It can't be that way. It has to be the murder of George Floyd and the actions that come from that and the change that comes from that. And so that's what I'm hoping for. California has led the way as far as I'm concerned, and we will continue to lead the way.
Yeah, can you talk about the City of Turlock Police Department's success with use of force and decreasing that over the years?
Well, first of all, you can go to our website for the Turlock Police Department. Our use of force since 2015, and I've been keeping track since 2015. I became the interim chief in 2016, halfway through. So 2015, we had 45 uses of force with approximately 4,000 arrests. That's unheard of. That's very low. But from that time on, we've conducted additional trainings. We've added procedural justice. We've added crisis intervention training, diffusion type training. We've lowered it for 2019 to 17 incidences and about 4,000 arrests, 3,700 and something. So that's huge, and we continue to develop more programs and more training, and it's a continuous process. It's not just one year after another. It's every moment of every day we have to remind staff that we're here to protect and serve our public, and our public will do the same with us. We can't do our job without trust. End of story.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about kind of the conversation on social media before this event? There were rumors of protesters being bussed in. Based on your experience with the organizers, is there anyone coming from out of town, and what are your thoughts on those social media rumors?
Well, social media is good because it's social, but it's being used to spread propaganda. And unfortunately, there's still hate out there, and there are individuals that utilize it to scare people, and some utilize it to shed a bad light on the organizations that are trying to protest peacefully. In other words, they claim to be those organizations and say things that are untruthful. Busing people into our communities hasn't happened. We do have, I'm not going to get into security, but we chase down every single one of them. And when I say we, it's not only the Turlock Police Department. You have the full force of law enforcement throughout our community, including the FBI. So it's taken very seriously, but most of it is propaganda and lies.
Yeah. And then one last question for you. We saw protests kind of, of this scale. There were hundreds of people along Gear Road just a few weeks ago. How are those protests different from this one in terms of law enforcement response?
Well, all of the protests are within your constitutional right, First Amendment, freedom of speech and the right to peacefully assemble. So there is no difference. That's a protest, this is a vigil, and there'll be lighting electronic candles here. But for police response, if you notice on Gear Road, you barely saw us, but we were there. It depends on the circumstances. This is a high-speed roadway here, so we've got to take a little bit more precautions for the safety of everyone involved. But we're there to protect the peace without infringing on the First Amendment rights. But unlawful activity will not be tolerated.
One more question. Why don't you reference the Reopen Turlock page specifically and about the counter
Okay, yeah.
people that we're going to come out? What they said, we're saying,
Yeah. As I mentioned before, there was a flurry of activity on social media before this event, and there's the Reopen Turlock page, which has kind of grown into an activist group itself. We saw people, saying lock and load, go down to Central Park and protect what's ours. What are your thoughts on that? Is that kind of speech necessary, and how are you guys going to ensure that there's no conflict here tonight?
No, that speech is not necessary. It's hate speech. It's trying to incite fear. It's trying to incite a riot, which is against the law. So this is going to be a vigil. It's going to be peaceful, and they have a right to assemble. And any organization or group that tries to infringe on that right will be arrested. And believe me, there's lots of officers out here, and there's multiple events going on throughout this county. There's lots of officers out here. You're not going to see them all, but they're here. So as soon as anyone tries to act on any of those comments, there will be severe repercussions from it.